Good morning, good evening, everybody joining us today for the next episode of the business case for AI and blockchain. My name is Irina Karagaur, and I'm your host for today, as always. And I'm very excited to welcome my guest, Charles Kerrigan, partner and CMS UK, lawyer, advisor, and author. Charles, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Serena. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for joining, and I'm very excited to have this conversation with you today as you are an accomplished professional in both AI and blockchain. And my very first question to you, Charles, what inspired you to focus on blockchain and AI?
Well, what else is there to do? It's the most interesting thing. There are so many answers to that question. I think I used to justify it to myself and say the new thing is relevant to lawyers. Some lawyers like to do the new thing, and some lawyers don't like to do the new thing. And I've generally been one of the ones that does. I think it's interesting to see how things change and evolve. And my background is corporate finance in technology, and I did a lot of work for financial institutions and fintechs. And I initially came to crypto via AI, which is the other way around to other people. But AI developers are interested in things that computers can do. So peer-to-peer transmission of value is an interesting thing for lots of AI developers. This is going back 15 or more years. So I found Bitcoin was what there was by then. And it looked interesting. I could say to myself, um, if these are new rails for messaging in finance, then it would be useful for me to know that, because in my day job, it's the thing that the banks and fintechs will engage with. And then I'll have the inside track because I'll be able to talk about it. And it didn't happen for years and years and years. But meanwhile, the crypto native industry grew up, all the big exchanges, lots of decentralization protocols, similar infrastructure, corporate finance, M&A, regulation, licensing. And that turned into a lot of work for people who were open to doing it and had those relationships. So I set off doing that, and I pulled in friends around me, lots of people who were clients, became colleagues, and there's a group of us who, apart from me, everyone else was a crypto founder or GC or C-suite or some version of something working crypto. And then now, as we get to 2026, in the UK, the rules are being written for traditional finance to go on chain. So it did turn out to be relevant to my original day job. But by the time that happened, my original day job had turned into something else. All the while, AI was developing alongside crypto. I think there's quite a significant convergence now. I think if we think about blockchain as not just something that creates digital assets, creates essentially messages that packages of information that can have value and represent value. But blockchain is also an information verification system. Crypto assets only work because you can prove that there is no double spending, a message was sent and received at a time-stamped point, there is immutability, it's append only, you can't reverse messages. So blockchain checks information and AI creates information. And the two of them, a lot of projects that we do now around provenance and similar, bring AI and blockchain together. And I think that will continue. So that's the best reason I can give today for why I started doing this. But there are lots of other reasons, I think, too. The people are amazing.
Fantastic. Yeah, I quite agree with you on that statement. But also, it's very interesting that your career started with AI and not blockchain, which is often in our industry, in the blockchain industry, is the other way around. And do you see many people actually understanding this, what you said about blockchain proving that the information is correct and trustworthy, and AI is providing information? Is there this awareness that you see, especially in the AI space, around this convergence?
Oh, that's a good question. The challenge in that is that it looks like that if you come at it from an engineering perspective, and it doesn't look like that if you come at it from other perspectives. For example, if you're a financial regulator, the fact that these things have some characteristics that make them look like investments, and this is part of the challenge. So Bitcoin isn't a security because there are no parties, there's no issuer, it doesn't have the characteristics of debt or equity or anything similar. So it kind of looks like it fails its original proof of concept. It turns out people don't use it to pay each other because it ended up being valuable. So Bitcoin does operate now as a store of value, if not a medium of exchange. So it's kind of money in that sense. And that means that the financial regulators pay attention to it, and financial crime experts and regulators pay attention to it as well. So I think these things look different depending on the seat that you sit in. And all of the talk about them over recent years has been that they have some characteristics of investment in the sense that you can acquire them and they might get more valuable or less valuable. I've been in this an awfully long time, relatively, and I can tell your audience that the value goes up and down. That is my great insight about crypto assets and investing. So from a financial regulator's perspective, they have these concerns around facilitation of financial crime, consumer harm. It never used to be systemic risk, but now it is, because stablecoins are having, this is the stablecoin summer, if it's the summer of something in crypto. We found the first real killer use case. So if you sit in a technical seat, if you're an engineer, it looks like engineering. If you sit in a financial regulator seat, it looks like investments. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have, and we'll probably go on to talk about it more in this conversation. I know you and I have this sort of common view and aim around ensuring that people look at these things from all directions and don't just assume that they are the thing that it's their day job to be interested in, that they're also seeing it from the perspective of other people, and that opens up the opportunities. It's important to have an open mind if you're working in this area.
Absolutely. And Charles, will real world assets have a summer, in your opinion, like stable coins do?
Yeah, I think I probably will borrow from Harvey Lee. He's a friend of mine, writes a newsletter called Tokenization Insights. He was the person who best and first explained to me. I need simple explanations. So we set off, a lot of the work that I was doing with the Investment Association was, that's the trade body for asset managers in the UK. And we were trying to support the members, who are household name asset managers, figure out how to get the benefits of tokenization. And with the UK government, UK regulator, the interest was in tokenized funds. They picked that as a use case because the UK is a home for a lot of fund managers. So it was a logical use case. It was difficult to get adoption because it turns out that's a hard problem. Among other things, pulling it back to stablecoin, you need a cash leg you can settle in that's also digital. Now, stablecoins have fixed that, but we didn't used to have stablecoins. We set off on this maybe 5 years ago. So we could describe how it could be done from a technical perspective, legal perspective, regulatory perspective. The commercial side was the challenge. And it turns out that it's easier to get people to engage with tokenized assets if they can easily trade in and out of them. So Harvey said to me, and he said this publicly in his newsletters, the more liquid it is, the quicker it will go on chain. So we start with cash, things like stablecoins, tokenized money market funds, so cash and cash equivalents, what regulators would call high quality liquid assets. You can turn it into dollars or sterling or euro now if you need to. So you're not taking the risk of illiquidity, getting stranded. And then it turns out that we're kind of working our way down the list from most liquid to least liquid. So cash, we're well away. Tokenized credit, private credit, has been quicker than equity because it's just contracts. It's less complicated. You don't have national legislation for how companies and corporations need to be incorporated, where the registers of members need to be. If you're tokenizing equity, the register of members is on chain, in the cloud, nowhere, and that's generally not how companies' legislation describes where regulated registers of members should be. They assume they're in an office somewhere. So we can do cash, we can do private credit, we can do equity, but it's a bit more complicated. We then get to things like funds, which are happening. Baillie Gifford in the UK have got a lot of great press for doing a wonderful project where they've done a natively tokenized fund issuance this week. It was getting the press in the UK. And then we finally get to real estate, which is the kind of the thing that everyone has always wanted to tokenize. It's a huge market. It's illiquid. Real estate trades in very lumpy transactions. Real estate is by definition extremely expensive. So the logic of fractionalization, opening up real estate to wider investor classes, wider groups of investors, there's huge logic there. People are finding it super hard to do, and I think it all goes back to this original comment of liquidity is solved by tokenization to some extent, but it's also the challenge that tokenization of itself doesn't make an illiquid asset liquid. So you need to start with the liquid things. Liquid by definition, tokenization helps. And then you get to the less liquid assets. And by then we've had lots of practice at doing this. Markets are used to it. People are more comfortable. So I think that's how it goes. That looks like how it's going. So RWA tokenization off the back of that chain. Although we've done some kind of funky projects. We did tokenized uranium for one of the DeFi protocol clients last year, which was an interesting project, and we all had to have explained to us that you couldn't have physical settlement in that. No one was saying that you could cash in your token for uranium. The uranium has to stay in a secure place with a special license, but you can trade by reference to the price of uranium. So everything can go on chain, and it will.
And Charles, do you think the adoption is also, I mean, liquidity, yes, it's one of the problems, but do you think also, is there a technical problem in accelerating adoption, or is it more of a solutions, ideas problem?
I'd have much happier clients if I knew the answer to that question. my advice would be even better. I think that's what we're figuring out, and I think that's part of the challenge, that the world is full of firms where the CEO has said, we got to do a tokenization project, and they've picked something very, very challenging, and it runs on for a long time. And I think we've been doing this for a long time, so we I think are pretty good at saying to people, tokenization is not a business model, and don't run ahead of your customer base. Maybe a good way of answering that question is to say that if you believe YouTube, you'd assume that the total addressable market for securities is like that, and the total addressable market for tokenized securities is like that, because you're using the internet as a distribution channel. Unfortunately, financial regulators don't think that you should just use the internet as a distribution channel. You also need licenses, and you need to have documents that are signed off by regulators, that are compliant with regulation, etc. So you actually end up with, in theory, tokenization. It is democratizing technology. in theory, but the way the regulations operate mean that you've got your existing market for the non-tokenized security, let's say, and bond or equity. And then there's a subset of that market, which is the people who would invest in that product that you're trying to distribute, not in a tokenized form, and a subset of people who are prepared to be relatively early in acquiring tokenized assets. So that's been the challenge. It's been translating that theoretical promise into something that works commercially. You're the market for people who would buy securities that you're putting into the market isn't changed by tokenization. It is still that market. And so often people are a bit disappointed to find out in practice that maybe the market is smaller than they thought. I think things like the UK Digit project, where UK government bonds, what we call gilts, are moving on chain, is going to help that, because it will mean that most of the universe of investors in bonds will be taking tokenized bonds by definition, and the fact that they're backed by the UK government helps both in the traditional sense of its UK credit risk, sovereign credit risk, so that's a good investment, we hope. I'm sitting in London. But also it will signal to the market that they can be confident in how the technology operates.
Well, let's hope that regulators will be nicer to the industry so we can move forward.
Yeah.
And Taras, I would like to move to AI now. I would like to have your take on where do you see most AI adoption among businesses from your practice?
I think I have a good practical answer to that question. So we do implementation projects in the team for lots of AI people. All these people that I described are kind of natively AI, because if you were the general counsel in a crypto firm, AI has been unavoidable for quite a long time. So that's probably part of the answer, that if we're doing implementation projects supporting, this is in my law firm role, we're supporting a bank, and we may do the same project supporting a fintech. I think the projects feel very different. There's just a kind of cultural aspect to that banks are by definition conservative and take things in a very steady way. Fintechs are generally set up by engineers, and they're full of engineers, and they're full of AI, and they're full of people who are very AI forward. So adoption, I think, is driven at least as much by organizational culture as it is by anything to do with the technology. That kind of openness to it is the senior management of the organization sufficiently confident in its understanding of what the family of AI technologies does that they would be open to you're finding stuff out by using AI. The most interesting thing about AI is how much we don't know about what it can do and what it can't do. That's not the kind of thing that banks will naturally lean into. It is the kind of thing that by definition, fintechs, crypto firms, deep tech firms, that's what they're about. So I think having AI in your organizational DNA is the superpower, and it's the challenge for everyone else. And it's the challenge for me in my day job. I'm sitting in a professional services law firm. We all use computers, but it's kind of analog. We're doing a somewhat digital version of the job that we used to do. So the challenge for me and all the guys in this small group around me is how can we be fully digital, how we can be connected to the clients, building agentic systems, offering our services in that fashion. That's the challenge, I think, for professional services in 2026 and beyond. It's hard.
It is indeed. And what are the other challenges and opportunities for businesses to adopt AI you see beyond legal practice?
We should talk about adoption, because I think one of the conversations that we have in the team is we're very pro AI adoption, but we think adoption sounds a bit like you would learn to use tools that are being made available to you. So that's a bit like you think about it in the sense of procurement. You say, in our case, we're in professional services. We provide legal and transactional and consulting type services to clients. So what vendors provide AI enabled tools that we could use to do that job? That works, and everyone's doing that, and everyone should keep doing that. But I think going back to this engineering point, the more interesting question is not how we adopt AI, but how we build systems and technologies ourselves and use AI to do that. And I guess AI adoption is strongly related to LLMs. So there's been AI not forever, for all of my life though. But it was, but LLMs based on the Google work around transformers in 2017 and beyond, came into public consciousness and public use in November 2022. So November 2022 is significant because one, we get LLMs, we get public releases of chat. They existed before, but really that's when most people came across them. And this is an adoption point, the most relevant thing about that is it changed the user interface. You could just type in the box and you were using AI. And we didn't used to have that before. So if you and I were having this conversation in October 2022, and we were talking to each other about adoption of AI, people would think we were nuts because you'd have to be some kind of computer scientist or mathematician to be adopting AI. There wasn't some way of adopting AI if you were a normal person. So the user interface has changed. That's fundamental. Then what do we do with that? And we're now kind of rolling through these questions around to what extent can we trust LLMs? We get hired a lot now by maybe the classic case is a VC who's got a tech, they like the look of it, and it says that this new business that they're considering investing in is powered by an AI engine. And it might not say anything else, or it might give some explanation. And the VCs, some of them, but some of them do have internal subject matter expertise on the technology, but lots don't. And they have relationships with technology due diligence firms who, again, can do some of this, but may not be deep experts in artificial intelligence technologies at the model level. So we get brought in to figure out, is this thing based on novel science, novel technology, something that's proprietary? Has it used training data that is legally available to it or not legally available to it? Has it got governance policies that are fit for purpose and being complied with? So a whole list of questions. We have a giant list of AI DDQ. If you're doing a kind of $1 billion transaction, our list is 20 pages long. If you're putting $2 million into a startup, obviously you don't want a list of 20 pages. So this super interesting new line of work of looking for signals on what we call inflated AI claims. Is the thing actually claiming to be something substantial, but it's vaporware, or it's a kind of not much more than a wrapped GPT? It's sometimes described as there are two sides of it. So why might a business not be strong? It could be because it isn't built on foundational technology and science. It's kind of borrowing technology that that isn't owned, that the value isn't part of what you would be getting access to as an investor. And then jumping over that, the other side of it is, well, actually, is it doing something that you could do relatively easy with the new technology, and therefore the famous phrase, the business could be disrupted by two kids in a garage with ChatGPT tomorrow. So investors are really challenged by both sides of that. Is the thing what it claims to be, or could it be easily, is it not defensible? The point around the moat, does it not have something that prevents it from being disrupted by the next new thing that may come down the track? So that goes back to this question of the capabilities of AI are so extraordinary and developing so quickly. We don't know. We don't know what we don't know. That is a very, very challenging investing environment. So people are trying to sort of pull in folks like us to help with that sort of thinking.
So perhaps there would be more trust in this technology if there is an AI that they can trust, sort of like sovereign AI. Or another point is the use of AI, how especially executives are able to use AI in organizations. So in one of your LinkedIn posts, you mentioned that, quote, the C-suite needs more AI subject matter experts. And that despite firms using AI, relatively few have technical expertise at the highest level. So also considering AI agents, widespread, at least conversation, maybe it's not so used in organizations yet. There is the data kind of Microsoft report data show that only 14 to 16% of workforce is using AI, which we don't know if it's LLM or agents. So how do we solve this with C-suite using AI?
There are a few things in that. I think I I feel like I can be provocative on this, because I'm often talking about, like, C-suites are famously a bunch of middle-aged men. So speaking as a middle-aged man, I can poke my peers on this. If you haven't grown up with AI, it's hard to get good at it quickly. And if you've got a busy job, then it's doubly hard. The greatest AI expertise is in relatively younger people than are generally represented on large company boards. So when I say that, and I it was a point I was deliberately trying to be provoking on LinkedIn and say that if you look at large company boards, there is that relatively few have got that deep subject matter technical expertise on the board, but every company is saying that it has AI strategies and ambitions and so on and so forth. So I don't mean to be too critical, because all the companies are getting support and trying to fix this up, but I do think it is a huge opportunity to change the mix of what the executive function of lots of companies looks like, and change the C-suite. And this is this question around, are there jobs for young people? Well, for sure there should be, because they are not only learning the various topics that you need to know, which is still maths and computer science and things like that, albeit that the very capable AI models can do coding. The broad range of humanities jobs as well. The Economist this week, last Thursday, had a great article about the number of AI firms, frontier model firms, that employ philosophers. I've got a very good friend who's one of the co-founders of a company called Holistic AI, who is a PhD from UCL, worked in the UCL Computer Science Lab. His PhD was in Immanuel Kant, the Enlightenment German philosopher. Could you believe it? So it's a broad range of talents. This is about how do we think about how these extraordinarily capable technologies should be used and governed and operated and those things. So the opportunity for AI to bring a diverse group of people with diverse skills and diverse age ranges, I think is one of the things that we should be absolutely grabbing. And I'm not buying this thing of there won't be jobs for young people. For one thing, AI trains you to be quicker. If you're working with clients that are using AI, they don't want to send you a message asking you a question or looking for something that you would previously package in a memo that might be 10 pages long. That would take you a week to produce. So it takes you a day to acknowledge the email and then a week to produce the memo, and then there's a substantial invoice at the end of it. Speed is the most characteristic thing about AI. If ever I'm thinking about what AI does, it makes everything quicker. It probably makes everything cheaper, and it ought to make everything better eventually once we figured it out, but it definitely makes everything quicker. So that is an easier thing for younger people who've grown up with TikTok and just speed. Speed is something that younger people are better at than older people. And this is something that organizations are going to have to figure out, how you are serving your customers. All of the most successful organizations currently have got successful because they're very good at making customers really like engaging with them and being customers of them, whether it's brand loyalty, or they just provide a service that you love, or they just do something that you need. Those firms tend to use a lot of AI and be good at being quick and early. And so I think that's the challenge for other firms, competitors, service providers like my day job, and all the rest of us.
Well, perhaps we'll at some point in the future see youth advisory boards to companies like United Nations is already doing with climate change and other international problems. That would be probably very exciting to see.
Yeah, exactly.
Charles, you wrote a book named The Financing of Intangible Assets. What is your take about the business opportunity of sovereign AI? As you already mentioned a few things about trust from organizations becoming an intangible asset for organizations.
Yeah. So the story of that book is quite funny, because I was originally just writing articles, as I'm generally writing because I don't understand something, so I'm trying to figure it out, and then everybody else is forced to see me thinking about it. So intangible assets, in this case, I'm talking about the economy that's not kind of fixed physical assets. And the economy used to be fixed physical assets. It was factories and widgets and stuff like that. And there's lots of that still in advanced manufacturing. But a huge part of the economy, the majority of most developed economies now, is intangible assets. Some of that's intellectual property. Intangible assets are much broader than that. So they're know-how, business processes, just people know more than they can explain. And that is embedded in organizations. That has value. It's not easily represented in financial statements. So I headed off trying to explain to equity and debt funders how they could engage in corporate finance transactions with assets that you can't kick, and particularly not real estate. It's easy to finance real estate. It's been done forever. People have by and large figured it out, and we're kind of working at the margins of that. The other stuff is different. It's new to corporate finance, and we keep having new types of intangible assets. So compute, we've got asset classes that are being generated by the AI economy, and lots of others to follow. So so I wrote these articles. I wrote a series of articles, one every couple of months. They were published in an academic journal, and this went on for quite a long time. I think I'd probably done about 30 or 40, and was thinking, at some point they're going to tell me to shut up and start talking about something else. But in fact, the journal was in part of the publishing house of a legal book publisher. So I got commissioned to turn the articles into a book and kind of spin it up into something broader, and that's where that book came from. The publisher already had the copyright; they just needed me to sort of pull it together, and expanded on some things. The challenge then is related to everything else that we've been talking about. That if you're a funder, you know how to do the thing that you've always done. What is challenging and potentially valuable is figuring out before your competitors how to do the thing that hasn't been done, which is funding intellectual property, intangible assets that aren't intellectual property, things like digital assets, the things that go in to make up the AI infrastructure stack. So this is growing and growing and growing, and obviously I couldn't foresee this when I started 10 years ago, but it was becoming a bit more obvious by the time the book came out, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. The point around sovereign AI, I think, is obviously in the front of people's minds. It didn't used to be. It used to be a theoretical thing. These things are always theoretical until they're not. But once the US government makes the bleeding edge models unavailable to non-US citizens, suddenly it's obvious why people have been saying that sovereign AI is an issue. So maybe if I explain sovereign AI very simply, it is if you think about the things that feed into AI infrastructure, it's data, it's compute, it's the chips, it's data centers, it's clouds, it's servers, it's all these things that are top of the news agenda at the moment. And in the same way as there are risks of lack of resilience in supply chains for food and other types of things that we saw in the COVID lockdown. Same goes for AI, and this became most newsworthy around chips and rare earth minerals, control of supply chains for those, but it's also relevant to access to models and where data is the AI that is being used in your country trained on data from your citizens or people who are not like your citizens, who have different characteristics. So I think sovereign AI almost speaks for itself now because it became so newsworthy as a result of decisions that have been taken in the AI superpowers in the US and China. And that's the challenge for other jurisdictions, to be able to respond to it and be confident that they are not going to be locked out of best technologies, and that their economies can thrive in ways that suit each economy individually. It's a huge question, far above my pay grade, but one that I'm interested in and spend a lot of time sort of thinking and talking about with experts.
Right, and you were recently at the Pontifical Academy of Science discussing AI, humanity, and leadership. What ideas, perhaps there was also discussion about sovereign AIs, but what ideas do you want to share with us from that event?
Yes, completely surreal. I was lucky enough to be invited to the Vatican to a group of about 40 to 50 execs, academics, policymakers, regulators, similar. Probably half the room were Italian and the other half from absolutely everywhere else. So this was the second time I'd been. The first time I went last year and had my mind blown by wandering around the Vatican and being in the room where Galileo was tried. Fortunately, I wasn't tried for any heretical beliefs that I may or may not have. And it wasn't particularly, or it wasn't at all directed towards Catholic social teaching. It was about these questions, the fundamental questions of humanity and AI. And this year, of course, we were in the metaphorical shadow, the literal shadow of St. Peter's, and the metaphorical shadow of the Pope Leo's encyclical, the Magnificat Humanitatis, where he took on the challenge of how do we think about humanity's relationship with AI. We don't know the answers to those questions, and I think the hard thing is that the questions sort of get answered by default. These things just kind of run away, and before you know it, the questions that you could have had have been answered, and it's hard to make those changes. So I think the critical thing about it was bringing together a group of people who could try and add different perspectives, an extraordinary range of perspectives in the room, and then come back to their societies, their industries, and try and be supportive of ensuring that AI is developed in the service of humanity and not vice versa.
That is fantastic experience. And speaking about the AI's judgment, for example, now with all this information, ChatGPT, everything that AI hallucinates, if judgment becomes more valuable in the AI age, how should we train leaders, lawyers, policymakers, and entrepreneurs to exercise better judgment?
Oh, that's a big question. I might cheekily give a very narrow answer. I'll do it by reference to lawyers, because I'm a lawyer and I'm surrounded by lawyers sitting here today. We have this question of one of the first reasons I became interested in AI was because I could foresee that maybe it would replace, if not lawyers, and a lot of the work that lawyers do. I thought, well, I better find out about that. And again, I was miles too early. This was like 2011 or 2010, 2011. But gosh, it's been interesting since. And we're now at that point where people are saying how much of the lawyer's role can be replaced by AI. So I think your question directs us towards more or less the correct short answer, which is some of the administrative and process parts of the role, for sure, and they should be. And then that should mean that a lot of the work that lawyers do, A, becomes more interesting, and B, costs less for clients. So that's win-win. But then the more profound question of the extent to which it will replace lawyers. And I guess my best short answer on that is the legal training is about critical thinking and not believing what you're told, being able to look at things from different perspectives, hold two or more opinions in your head at the same time, and engage with those. The training is therefore fantastic for use with LLMs. You're able to, there is only a marginal cost in producing an infinite amount of information. I think the best people who are using AI now or using LLMs in professional services are ones where they might get a first answer from the LLM, and then your job is to cross out 90% of it, because LLMs just talk and talk and talk, and the client doesn't want to hear that. We have amusing experiences now. We're very comfortable with clients saying, you know, we got this question, we've asked an LLM, this is what the LLM says, you know, is it right? That's fine, but sometimes the LLM produces 10 pages of material, and even if those 10 pages are all correct, there are no errors or hallucinations or similar in there. It's not making judgments, it's just saying this is its understanding of the law based on the sources it has, if it's reviewed primary sources and good secondary sources. But we might still say, okay, well, you've asked us a question, we could just answer the question, we could do that in an hour. If you want us to engage with the 10 pages that you've sent, that would take 2 or 3 hours. So it's your choice. And of course, most people say, well, I'd rather just have the answer to the question. So we're still figuring out how clients self-serve and how we engage with that. But critical thinking, lots of roles train you to be critical thinkers, but law is one of those roles. So it's good to have a legal training and be engaging with AI, I would say.
Charles, you just made me very hopeful because we're not going to see layoffs as many as a lot of people think if we have the right training for professions like law and others. And do you think our society is becoming more comfortable with error because AI can instantly correct things and generate another answer and another draft, and professionals are more exposed to this kind of routine?
It definitely creates too much information. So we've got this kind of weird paradox where now AI is an amazing report writer. I mean, it's best at being a marketing officer because if you have something that's a very unexciting business, but you've got AI to describe it, it will make it sound quite remarkable and astonishing. So hire AI as your chief marketing officer. That makes sense. AI produces great reports, and provided that you're good at here's another thing lawyers are good at. We're good at fact checking. Journalists are trained in fact checking. Lawyers are trained in fact checking. So it's not difficult to check all of the underlying sources and verify AI generated material. If you're pushed for time, then that may put pressure on that. And if you're overconfident about the AI systems that you've got, or it would take you as long to check the AI answer. This goes back to my previous answer. If it would take you an hour to do it yourself and 2 hours to check what the AI says, then do it yourself. But from a societal level, we got this paradox now. One, AI will produce amazing reports. It's fantastic at synthesizing information. Two, no one reads anything. So we've now got this amazing abundance of information with no one who's got the time or inclination to read it. Well, the AI systems are good at reading it, but in that case, we don't need glossy reports. They should just be written in Markdown so that an AI agent could review them. So I think we've still got to kind of come to terms with what that looks like. I think the best answer I can give you around society is there is too much information. So people developing critical thinking skills to not be bamboozled by the algorithm and make deliberate choices about what they're reading and why.
Critical thinking is everything in our age and in the age of AI. And considering that LLMs are trained on the internet that is today largely commercial and transactional, do you think a more decentralized internet could change the worldview that AI systems absorb?
I do like decentralization. So I came to crypto via DeFi, so that's very close to my heart. And I think we should be experimenting with decentralization in all these areas. In AI, there are decentralized AI projects. Flower Labs is an amazing project. People can look up them and see the work that they're doing. Federated AI, decentralized AI, all of these things are community-led projects where they are still working through the experimental phase to get answers to your question. So yeah, I think agentic systems, one of the risks of them is that LLMs are brilliant at selling you things. And if you have agents, you need to finely calibrate your agent so it doesn't spend all of your money on things that you don't want. There's been lots of experiments in that already by e-commerce firms who've tried to anticipate what buyers might want. And of course, all algorithms on every site is trying to, if it's a commercial site, trying to use as personalized data as possible to sell you stuff. The flip side of that would be that we can use the same technologies for financial services, financial products to be more personalized. So the answer with AI is always it can improve things enormously, or it can make things far worse. And that's the bit where the people have got to get in the middle and ensure that we are building compliance by design, governance by design, I think it's unrealistic to think that we would have a human in the loop for everything. There is just too much, and the agentic systems can operate too quickly. So it's about that design and governance, and that's if I represent a couple of my colleagues, Lisa McClory, who is part of the team I work with very closely, is leaning over my shoulder metaphorically as I'm speaking. She's a kind of super expert in this. Her background is crypto, but actually she came at it as a data and data protection and data sovereignty lawyer and advisor.
And in this context, Charles, my last question for today, this has been a fantastic discussion. And to close out, are you more optimistic or more concerned about the current direction of AI?
Oh, what a great question. Optimistic, always, always. Do I have grounds for optimism? I think the by far the biggest question is this question around jobs and social utility, social cohesion. Every society is going to figure that out for itself. And it's going to be figured out on a supranational and international basis as well. So I'm showing my old hippie roots here. We got to find ways of making it work for us. It is such an extraordinary technology that I don't want to minimize the power that it could do negatively. But that's only the case because it can also do so much good and be so powerful. It's hard to get people to think about AI because I've been involved in lots of public projects where we survey people, and you can't really cut through. This maybe goes back to the point of do people know enough about AI to be able to engage with it and make judgments? And if you just ask a survey question, what do you think to AI? People have no idea. They don't know what you're talking about or why. If you frame the question a certain way, and I'm going to exaggerate for effect, but it's really hard not to do this one way. If you say, what do you think to AI? You know, the thing that's going to kill us all and harvest our organs for paper clips. Well, people are generally pretty negative about it. If you say, what do you think to AI? That thing that's going to cure all the diseases, then people are much more positive. So obviously, it depends on what AI is doing. And that, I think, is probably the strongest argument. We always come out of these things going, we've got to get people more into it, better understanding it, more engaging with it, and not just typing in the box, actually seeing what's going on underneath the hood. Why does it do what it does? How does it work? It's hallucinations are quite predictable if you understand how models work and training data and things like that, and largely avoidable if you've got a good understanding of what's going on. So more intelligence and education is essentially the answer, and of course, you know, AI is doing that. So I finished that by saying you don't need to read the whole encyclical, but if you read an AI-generated summary of the Pope's encyclical, it's pretty interesting on those questions. But always optimistic, because there are always people. I work in AI, but I jump out of bed in the morning because I love the people that I work with. So that won't change.
Fantastic closing remarks, Charles. Thank you so much for joining us, and for everybody watching. So they are also optimistic and they follow your optimistic insights. Where can they find you? On which platforms you're active, and would it be possible to reach out to you?
Oh God, people can definitely reach out to me. Please link in. I'm I'm a middle-aged solicitor, so I'm more active on LinkedIn than I am on anything else. And I've got some of the colleagues are very cool and very good at LinkedIn. So I was most recently appearing on LinkedIn with my face merged as a cat. So, so if you find me on LinkedIn, you'll also find Erica Stanford, who's not here today, but sits behind me, is a deep expert in lots of these things, particularly social engineering, misinformation, disinformation. So you can find us all together at CMS. You can find us on LinkedIn. We'd love to be in touch with people and have this conversation as an ongoing thing.
Thank you so much, Charles. It's been fantastic. Once again, thank you for sharing your expertise and experience and knowledge. We appreciate you on the show.
Thanks, Serena. It's very cool. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Please remember to subscribe on YouTube. It's free, and it helps us grow the channel and invite more of guests like Charles, who are very knowledgeable in their field in AI and blockchain. So thank you for being with us, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.